sometimes a story comes along that represents all that BYU represents: faith, goodwill, and an amazing athletic occurrence. Such as the story of a young man from Richfield, Connecticut named Matthew Turley.
Matthew was very competitive. He loved to compete. So whenever he tried to do something, he gave it his very best effort.
He worked on his pitching skills, so often we would just hold the glove and be the catcher while he practiced over and over.
He would send me to one end of the yard and he'd go to the other and throw the football all the way across, aiming for me.
He said he didn't start playing football until high school and decided he wanted to play quarterback. And they had a very successful team his senior year. They went to the state championships. The game was originally scheduled to be played on a Saturday, and it turned out we had a big snowstorm. So it was postponed till Sunday when they could clear the fields and get everything ready. And so that actually created the dilemma that Matthew had to face.
I remember receiving a telephone call from him while he was at the school, and they had made that announcement, and he said, "What do I do?"
And the team needed him because the quarterback had ankle problems, I believe, and it was going to be iffy. They needed the backup.
The reporters came to the school knowing that he had to make that decision, and they met with him and asked him what he was going to do.
One local reporter was so captivated by his reluctancy to play that she wrote an article about it. Matt said that he never faced a decision of this magnitude.
The news reporter said she got more responses about that article than any other article she had ever written.
From a religious study group in Illinois to a soccer team in Australia, the article drew responses of admiration and curiosity about Matt's decision. In the end, Matt chose his faith over his football. A reverend at Western Connecticut State University said Matt was a person who's talking the talk and walking the walk, and he reminded him of Chariots of Fire, where Eric Little would not run the first day of the race in the Olympics because of his faith. Despite Matt's absence, his team pulled out a 14-13 victory.
Matthew always had the desire to go to BYU from the time he was a small boy.
Some of my best memories were the time we spent together at BYU. It was just so fun to see him interact with his friends who had his same standards, something he didn't really get as he grew up in the East Coast.
He just enjoyed being a fan of BYU sports, of which he was a huge fan.
He had his all sport pass, and he loved going to the football games.
At the end of his freshman year in 2004, Matt received his mission call to the Argentina Mendoza mission, and it was here that his life and his family's would change forever.
It was a Sunday afternoon. I had arrived in London, and I was in my hotel room, and that's when I received the phone call.
Mom and I were on our way back from a piano concert, and we had pulled into our driveway, and I remember seeing two cars there.
We were met at the home by our bishop and a member of our stake presidency. I mean, when I saw the look on their faces, I knew that something had happened.
And I was told to bring Jeffrey into our sunroom, where we had to wait for my mom to hear the news from my dad.
We received a phone call that all of the siblings there, that we all needed to be together, and he said, make sure that happens in a few minutes. And we just kind of sat around and waited for the phone to ring, knowing that something was seriously wrong.
And we told them the news that Matthew had died earlier that day.
They were the hardest words to hear, and at that very moment we all just fell into sobs.
We have a special needs child, Jeffrey, and he somehow also understood or felt the gravity of the situation.
I miss Matt. I miss him so much. Well, I miss him right now. I do.
But it was devastating. You know, he was.
He was 3 months away from returning home. We had already been notified of his travel plans. We had purchased tickets ourselves to go meet him in Argentina. We were, I think, overwhelmed by the outpouring of support.
It seemed like everybody had their own story to tell, you know, about some way that he had affected their life.
Little, like Turley, also served a mission for his faith and died among the people he served. Little said, "We are all missionaries. Wherever we go, we either bring people nearer to Christ or we repel them from Christ."
It's a great example of how if you do stand for your convictions, and you do have to go alone from time to time, you won't be alone very long. There are always a lot of good people out there who will join with you, and I think Matthew taught that lesson in a way that made an impact on all of us and we'll always remember.
Matt's story is relatable to many LDS youth growing up with pressure to play sports on Sunday. His example is one that Matt's family hopes will be remembered.
Thanks, Aaron.